Welcome back to the Fantasy Flavor Podcast, where we spicing up your daily dose of fantasy football content. Alright, now time for some wide receiver landing spot talk. My name is Dylan, and I'm joined here with Justin, Trenton, and Sanat, and we're going to be talking about wide receiver landing spots. So Justin, who's our first landing spot? And maybe they'll take the first wide receiver in the NFL draft.
So my landing spot here that I'm going to talk about is the New York Jets. And while I think this is not the sexiest landing spot, I think this is the one that's the most glaring need for any team out there. Right now, their current depth chart is Crowder and Perriman. And I guess Enunwa is actually still on the roster, believe that or not. I don't know if he's ever going to come back because of his head injuries or how he's even been. But beyond that, it's Vincent Smith and Josh Doctson. So not a lot there at wide receiver to be proud of. So I could definitely see them taking one very early in the first. Right now there's, some secrets out there that potentially Lamb could be going there at that 11th pick. So I don't see that as being more likely. I think they just have really needs everywhere on offense, but they could do it there because that is one of the biggest glaring needs, assuming they're still happy with Bell. But they also have plenty of other picks everywhere. They have their second. They have 2 picks in the third, a fourth, a fifth, and then 2 6. So there's plenty of wide receivers everywhere that they could go with. I've seen them mocked Jefferson, Shenault, Pittman, and little tidbit there. He did end up playing with Darnold 2 years. So it's always nice to have that rapport. I've also seen Brandon Ayuk and then Gabriel Davis mocked there as well. And I think all those guys would be good fits. Jefferson and Crowder kind of clashes a little bit because they both primarily play the slot, but I think the rest of the guys there would be really good fits for them. And then just some changes that they made to their offense. Obviously, I didn't mention Anderson on their depth chart because he's gone, but they did add Perriman there. So it's basically just your decoy guy. It's not a big deal. And then they actually brought in 5 offensive linemen so far in offseason. So they are reworking that line, still have Bell. So they could potentially be there with a wide receiver. And their defense last year, I know they gave up a lot of points, but it was actually really good with Jamal Adams back there. I think that they've got a lot of things that they're looking forward to. But Darnold's showing a lot of good signs. So I think that he could potentially step up and do a lot better. So here's some stats for Darnold last year that I thought were pretty interesting. Last year, he was 9th in the pressured completion percentage, and he was 14th in clean pocket completion percentage. And in a clean pocket, his completion percentage was about 73%. So with a completely revamped O-line, that gives me a lot of good feelings. So I think that a wide receiver could actually end up being a good place here. And, if they can break, that Adam Gase curse, this could be a good spot.
Yeah, I definitely think they could grab a receiver round 1 or maybe round 2. They really, really need it badly because Rashad Perriman isn't going to be the answer. So I think Hoover Lancer is going to be in for a lot of targets. Moving on here, we actually have myself and overall here, I chose the Packers. They don't really need a wide receiver 1, but like a wide receiver 2, they definitely need one. I mean, it was just awful. Their current depth chart is Devontae Adams, who's a star, and then Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Super disappointing. He was supposed to be the breakout candidate. Allen Lazard showed some promise, and they did sign Devin Funchess. They also have Equanimous St. Brown, I believe, still on the roster. And do you guys remember Jamon Moore? I think he's still on the roster. I don't even know anymore. But that's kind of their depth
He's
chart.
just the water guy.
Yeah, Jamon Moore. I love me some Jamon Moore. But some players I'm seeing being mocked there are Denzel Mims. That'd be my favorite. Justin Jefferson, also one of my favorites in this draft class. Jalen Reagor, another. I like a lot of the wide receivers here, but also some T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., Laviska Shenault. They own their own 1 through 5. They do have 3 6ths and 2 7ths. I don't care about the wide receivers drafted then. Won't really have any value here. But I do see them grabbing one in day 1 or day 2, definitely a wide receiver. The one thing I do want to mention though is they do like their bigger and taller wide receivers. A lot of their wide receivers are like 6 foot plus, so that's why I don't feel like Jalen Reagor will go there, or Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is actually barely over 6 foot, but that's why I do like the Denzel Mims or like the T. Higgins of the world because they kind of fit what that front office likes at wide receiver, and they proved that by adding Devin Funchess, but he sucks. So does Jimmy
They
Graham, who
signed him
left.
to replace Jimmy Graham.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, maybe they move him at tight end. I believe he played some tight end at Michigan, so um but
I
it's
mean,
just kind of like they did lose Brian Bulaga to the Chargers, I believe. So overall for the offense, I kind of wanted to look at how their offense worked. Aaron Rodgers was second in the NFL in deep ball attempts with 94. Now they don't really have a deep threat there. They kind of wanted MVS to be that. Really wasn't that. Devontae Adams is a decent deep threat though through his route running. Red zone attempts, they were fourth in red zone attempts for the wide receivers, third in drop passes, fifth in air yards, and seventh in total yak. So it is a really good landing spot. Aaron Rodgers really hasn't been the same, but he hasn't had that number two to help him be the same, really, because he doesn't really like his tight ends much. So Jimmy Graham, it was also disappointing. So you could be the number two, honestly. Just overall for me, to wrap up with kind of the Packers, they won't be the Batman, but they could be like a really, really good Robin. And we've seen players like Stephon Diggs and Chris Godwin, the Robins on the teams, have really good fantasy seasons. So don't let that kind of sway you away from them. But next we have Trenton here with pretty shitty team, to be honest. Who do you got?
Oh, fight me. All right. Yeah, next we have the Colts here. Like current depth chart, they do have T.Y. Hilton, though he is getting older. They have Zach Pascal, who actually came on to the scene pretty well last year, but I don't think he's their long-term guy. They also have Paris Campbell, who they drafted last year. He's a really nice speed guy, but he just couldn't stay healthy. And they do have as like a fourth wide receiver. Nobody else from any other team would know him. Darius Fountain. He was drafted a couple years back. So really, there is very little competition there. T.Y. Hilton's the only one that should see targets, a lot of targets, and then after that, it could go to anybody. And T.Y.'s, like I said, is getting up there in age. He could retire in a few years, and it'll be somebody else's entirely different. It'll be somebody else, some other receivers' offense to run. So some prospects that you're seeing being mocked there with both they have 2 second rounders at 34 and 44, and they also have their third rounder. So you see names like Denzel Mims being mocked. You see T. Higgins, Laviska Shenault, those type of guys. They are being mocked there because they are bigger body guys. And that's what Phillip Rivers, their new quarterback in Indy, that's what he loves to throw to. He loves those bigger bodied receivers. We saw it with Keenan Allen and I'm blanking on who else they had. Mike Williams. Yes. He likes his bigger bodied wide receivers. They did lose Eric Ebron and Devin Funchess in free agency, so there goes quite a few potential targets out the window. So lots of targets to be given to whoever they draft, and I feel like they do draft one of those guys with one of their second round picks. They do have a great offensive line there in Indy, so their quarterback should be able to get the ball out pretty easily. They have targeted tight ends a lot in the past, but Rivers, we saw when he was with the Chargers, he doesn't target his tight ends a whole ton. We all know everybody wanted Hunter Henry in fantasy, and then he just wasn't consistent enough because he didn't get the ball enough. I think Phillip Rivers just loves his wide receiver, so that's another good point for this team. But yeah, that's about it for the Colts. They're a great landing spot, in my opinion.
Phillip Rivers was third in air yards. I think they have some long-term concern there since wide receivers take longer to develop, though, because we don't know who the quarterback is going to be, but I think it's a great spot. So next we have probably maybe one of the best landing spots here. One of San's favorite teams, one of my most hated teams. Who do we got?
yeah, I'm going with the Eagles. Everybody knows that they need wide receivers. Who were they playing with last year? Like Alshon was injured, Deshaun was injured, JJ Arcega-Whiteside did not do anything. Greg Ward, you know, he came on and did some things. Poor Wentz was playing with carcasses on the field. He was just throwing. Alshon was their highest reception guy among the wide receivers, and he was fourth in receptions behind Ertz. Who is the other tight end?
Dallas
Dallas
Goddard.
Goddard.
Goddard, and then Sanders. He was the fourth with 43 receptions. So they really need wide receivers bad because both of their wide receivers are probably going to join AARP next year. They might even take two wide receivers in the first and second round. They have their first rounder and their second rounder. So it's not out of the question that they draft two wide receivers in this draft. And it's a deep draft. So some of the wide receivers in the first round that are being mocked are like Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, and Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs could replace Deshaun Jackson easily and even better. They also lost Aguilar for this slot, so maybe Justin Jefferson can replace him there. They were bottom half in pass percentage at about 48%, which is understandable. They did not have anyone to catch the passes. And then they have a very good coach. Their O-line is very good. They have a very good young quarterback, and the wide receiver one job is for the taking there. I mean, anyone who comes there and shows up, good talent, they will take the wide receiver one job there, and with a young quarterback for a long time. So I mean, whoever goes there in the first round will be very high in my mock draft, in the rookie mock draft. So I mean, it's very obvious and a landing spot, and I think it's a very good one.
Yeah, it should be a really good one, honestly, as long as Winston stays healthy. But Justin has another potentially good landing spot here. What do you got?
So I'm sorry to say, Sutton owners, I'm talking about the Broncos. And I've seen a lot of mocks that actually have them going in their first round pick with taking a wide receiver off the board immediately. I've seen everybody that's supposed to go in the first round go up there. Your Ruggs, your Lamb, your Judy. They've all been mocked to go to the Broncos, which I really, if anybody, I want Ruggs there because with their current depth chart of Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton, Tim Patrick, and then I guess Jawan Winfrey's still on the team. That guy that everybody wanted to pick up last preseason. I think Ruggs is the best fit there because Sutton he's kind of suited to be that wide receiver where Ruggs fits the X to be that deep decoy, and then you got Hamilton there in the slot. I think that'd be a pretty good fit there. I would really hate it for my Sutton shares if Lamb or Judy goes there because they're going to kind of play similar to how he plays, and I think that'd be bad for him. But they've still got their second pick. They've got 3 third-round picks. So even if they don't go in the first, there's plenty of wide receivers deep in this class where they could go with like an Ayuk or a Hamler, another, big fast guy to be a default guy, or maybe even a Chenault in the second or third round. So I think there's a lot of options here, and I think it could be a good place to go. Drew Lock wasn't really bad that year. He was 4-1, in this season. His average depth target, though, was only 7.2 yards. So I think that could be that they just didn't have field stretchers last year. I mean, Tim Patrick's not a very fast guy. So I think that this could be a good spot. They brought in Melvin Gordon. They brought in some offensive linemen. They brought in Nick Vannett, who's a very good pass blocking tight end. So I think that there's some good pieces on this team, and I think a good number 2 there would be much appreciated. I don't really want to land though. That's what I got about them.
Yeah, I think Ruggs would kind of be like the best player there for fantasy too, because you don't want to see Sutton's volume go away, and yeah, like Ruggs doesn't need it. But next up, we have me, and I'll be kind of talking about the same players. So guys like Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, and CeeDee Lamb are all being mocked to them. I'm hearing they're going to take a wide receiver with their 13th overall pick and trade back with 31 because they have no picks in the second, third, or fourth round other than those 2 first, which is why they traded Buckner. Their current depth chart is Deebo Samuel, who's pretty solid. They, I believe they put a tender on Kendrick Bourne. Marquise Goodwin hasn't been able to get on the field, and the route running god always open himself, Dante Pettis. Not going to say any names of who liked him, but just overall, it's just kind of like they need an alpha. And can Deebo be an alpha? Potentially. But, I think they could use a number 1 there. They do have George Kittle who could, but they did lose Emmanuel Sanders there, which is kind of the main offensive kind of loss there. But that's good for the wide receivers. It opens up targets. So how does this offense operate? That's kind of what I wanted to look into, this kind of like matchup prospect. So they were 13th in passing attempts last season. Very, very good. 5th in passing touchdowns. Shocked me. I did not know Jimmy G threw for that many touchdowns. Jimmy G was also 3rd in yards per attempt and true completion percentage. But the thing, I'm like, this all kind of looks nice, but I thought they were kind of a dink and dunk offense. And look what I found. They're 26th in air yards. And 49ers receivers were 6th most in total yards after the catch in 2019. This offense runs through dink and dunks. So while Henry Ruggs could be a great field stretcher, especially if they don't believe in Goodwin, I could see him being the pick. I do feel like Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb kind of fit this team very, very well, and they could be potentially the highest ranked wide receiver over an Eagles wide receiver, just due to like talent, draft capital, and all. If I was choosing between Jeudy and Lamb, I love Lamb more as a prospect, but I think Jeudy kind of fits what they want to do more, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'd say Jeudy, but it's really close. Both of them are kind of different. It depends. Like I feel like they put Jeudy in the slot, and Lamb would be more of that alpha X. So it depends on what they want with that offense and how they're going to use Debo. But that's all I have there for the 49ers. So let's kick it back here to Trenton to talk about the same prospects probably here with your team.
Yeah, it's a lot of these teams are looking at wide receivers early. And actually, this is in the same era you had it. You had the 49ers at pick 13. Justin earlier brought up the Jets at pick 11. So sandwiched right in between those two picks, you have the Raiders, who are also really in need of a wide receiver. Currently on their roster, they have Tyrell Williams, big question mark, Hunter Renfrow, who knows what you're getting there, and the king of dropped passes, Nelson Aguilar. So they need a wide receiver. So they're looking at a first-round pick, definitely, either at 12 or at 19, or maybe even at both. Who knows? But look, you're looking at CeeDee Lamb, you're looking at Jerry Jeudy, you're looking at Henry Ruggs. All those guys are talented. Any single one of those guys can come in and help that passing game. They did add Marcus Mariota to, I'm assuming, be their backup. I don't think he'll take the job from Carr, but who knows? They did, as I mentioned, they did add Aguilar, but he's not really that concerning to me. As far as the team goes, they're very average. They have an average offensive line. They were pretty much the league average in passing. All those passing statistics, they were right at league average, pretty much. The one thing that concerns me is that Carr could be on his way out in the next few years. I've heard lots of rumors that the Raiders are looking to get a new quarterback that will move with them to Vegas. So maybe not this year, but maybe next year they're looking at getting a quarterback bringing in, and that'll leave question marks in the passing game. They might lean on Josh Jacobs in the ground game more if that happens. So with a team that runs the ball a lot with Jacobs, they could even start doing that more, and that would concern me for the wide receiver position. But they are definitely looking for an alpha wide receiver, that wide receiver one. And no matter what, even if the team is the worst in the league passing, that wide receiver one on that team will still have value.
Yeah, definitely. I think they have a whole bunch of targets. Derek Carr's kind of meh, but he's had 1,000-yard receivers in the past. Michael Crabtree, can't remember if he had 1,000, but Mark Cooper definitely had 1,000 in his few years there.
He did. Crabtree had to.
I believe those were even the same year too. So it shows you he can feed wide receivers even if we don't believe in his talent. Finally, here, one of my favorite, most interesting landing spots here, with Sanat in here. Who's the team?
The team is the Vikings, who just traded away their star receiver, if you want to say, or the cranky receiver to the Bills. Who always cried about targets. I know that they are not one of those teams who throw a lot, but they are more run heavy, especially after Gary Kubiak came there. But Kubiak is one of the best offensive minds in the league. Wherever he has been, those offenses have been great. The depth chart is just Adam Thielen. That's the only good name there. Apart from that, they signed Tajay Sharp, who has done nothing in his career. They have BC Johnson. They have Chad Beebe. They're all depth pieces. They're just depth guys there. They have two first rounders now after the trade of Diggs, 22nd and 25th pick. I'm pretty sure they will go at least one of them with a wide receiver, someone like Jalen Rager, Denzel Mims, T. Higgins, and even KJ Hamler is being mocked there in say second or third round. So uh, I think, I mean, even though their pass volume, they were like bottom five in the pass play percentage last year, but they were top five in the year before. And last year, Adam Thielen was out for almost half a year. So they lost their best wide receiver, and that's why the pass percentage might have gone a little bit down. I think it will go a little bit up this year, and they can definitely support two wide receivers. Kirk Cousins is one of the best, quarterbacks in accuracy. So if a good prospect goes there, I think Thielen will attract most of the coverages, so that guy can do really, really well. And I really like Denzel Mims there. If he goes there, I think it will be a great fit, and he will really rise high on my rookie mocks.
Yeah, I really like Rager there too. Rager kind of reminds me of Stephon Diggs, DJ Moore, Percy Harvin. I've even heard, not necessarily
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill. He didn't test that fast there at the combine, but I think that'd be great for Jalen Rager. He also keeps that purple uniform. He's a wide receiver at TCU. So let's open it up here. What are your kind of thoughts on this whole draft class, guys? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it just deep? Is it top
it is
heavy?
very deep. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, I think it's top heavy in the sense that Lamb and Judy are very good, but I think it's a lot of very, very good prospects. And we did not even talk about one of the best landing spots in the Texans. I think that's another great landing spot.
Yeah, they do have an early
Right.
second, so maybe they could grab a Denzel Mims, Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, you know?
I have a
I think
question for
Mims there
y'all.
would be great.
I want to see what y'all think. Who do you think is the first wide receiver drafted?
Henry Ruggs, and it shouldn't be, but it will be.
Judy.
I
I
think
think
it'd
Judy,
be
Judy.
Judy.
Judy or Ruggs, but man,
I think
I've
it will
been
be
hearing
Judy.
some rumors about Ruggs. Teams love the
Yeah,
speed.
I agree. It's most years you look at wide receivers that are drafted, the fast wide receivers go much earlier than expected. So I think it will be Ruggs. I'd have to get if I had to guess.
Doubt it. I think it will be Judy to who's the 11th pick?
Jets, I believe.
It's yeah,
Yes,
probably
Jets.
Jets.
I've been hearing Jets love Matt Miller, normally pretty reliable with this, says the Jets front office, if they can't grab a tackle, they love CD Lamb. They really like CD Lamb. So it could be Lamb. It's really a wild card. All three of them are good for real life football. I don't
Mhm.
like Ruggs at all in fantasy, but
If the
Ruggs.
Jets take the
Mhm.
first wide receiver, I don't think it's going to be Ruggs because him and Perriman kind of play the same roles.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah, that's
Ruggs will be
true.
better at it, but it seems like a redundant piece in that offense. I think Lamb or Judy would both fit.
No, what other thing can
Mhm.
happen is that when there is something like a deep class in one position, then everyone starts,
To fall. That happened in
everyone starts to fall.
2019. Yeah,
Yeah, that
2019
happens a
was a good
lot.
wide receiver
So
class.
yeah, it is possible that these top receivers can go to great landing spots like the Vikings or the Eagles or the Texans also might get one of those great wide receivers.
I don't see like
Mhm.
the top three.
Not the top three.
Mhm.
I'm saying in
Yeah,
second round they are not falling in second round. That's not possible. But
Right.
yeah, I mean one of the good ones like Mims.
Mhm.
Mims is mocked
exactly.
right now as at the end of the first round. I think he can fall to the second, possibly.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible.
Who's the? I have a question. Who's your like? We can go one by one. Who's your best match in the best place? Like, if you see them, you will be like licking your chops.
Out of like the 8 teams that
You
we
can add
talked
a
about,
Houston too. You can add Texans too.
oh,
Any
that's
team
no
like the
fun. Okay,
for rookie mocks.
sure.
Who will be your
Mhm.
101 or at least top three?
I'll give you a sleeper, but I kind of want to don't go first. Someone else go first.
I'll go first.
Lamb
I think Mims
to the Eagles.
at the Eagles.
I was gonna.
Mims of the Eagles would be
Mhm.
good. I like that.
How about you,
He wouldn't be
Trev?
my one-on-one.
I'd say Mims as well, but I think he'd do really nice on my Colts. I know I'm sounding like a homer, but I think he'd fit really well into that team.
No Judy love,
know.
really.
No, but the opportunity we are talking about, like, they will be blasting in the first year itself. I don't think Colts will give him that much opportunity. Like Eagles and Mims, or even Raiders, I don't
For
think
long term,
will
I
give
like
too
it.
much opportunity.
Oh,
Yeah, for long term, I like it, but short term, yeah, you'd have to look at the Eagles or maybe the
Texans.
Raiders as
Yeah.
teams that are Texans. Yeah, teams that need a wide receiver one.
To answer your question, I think Jalen Rager on the Packers, if they can get over drafting someone a little bit shorter, would be so perfect. He's a deep threat. He's fast, and they like the deep targets, but he's also good at yak. I think he could be more of a B than an A, but I could genuinely see him hitting 1,000 yards as soon as his second year in Green Bay, because Aaron Rodgers is just so good at feeding those wide receivers. But here's a point I kind of wanted to ask, kind of like overall, like do we? Okay, here's kind of my point. So like in 2019, we saw these rookies like AJ Brown, Debo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, all like blow up. Like rookie wide receivers don't do what they did, especially AJ Brown. 1,000 yards is nuts. The only time we've seen anything close to is 2014. Do these wide receivers disappoint because of how well these rookie wide receivers did last year?
Good. I mean, last year was just a very, very, very big outlier.
Yeah, it was an
But
anomaly, I think.
the thing is that this year there are better landing spots than it was last year. This year there are more good landing spots, so it is possible that at least 3 or 4, I mean 2 or 3 of them could have 1,000 yards. I will not discount that, but it's unlikely.
I think probably 4 could.
I mean 3 or 4, whatever, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I think it could
I
disappoint.
think they will be better than last year's.
You think they're going to be better than last year's, and last year's was insane. Last
Hey,
year's
last
was
year was
really
crazy.
insane.
Last year was crazy, but I do think that there's enough really good landing spots and marriages that look like they could really happen that would make that worthy. I
Yeah.
mean, Eagles and Jets. I mean, somebody could come into the Jets and be a 1,000-yard receiver. They don't have one.
Exactly. Same with
I
Eagles.
could easily
Same
do
with
that. Same with the
Texans.
Eagles. Anybody can show up. So there's 2 right there, and
Texans.
there's so many other good landing spots
Texans,
that
like, they don't have any wide receiver. I mean, Fuller is made of glass. He will break down any time.
Yeah, so
Who else is there?
Yeah, that's a good point. But I don't know, rookie wide receivers, I don't know. But for me, I do think, okay, you can only pick one wide receiver. Which wide receiver hits 1,000 yards? You can only pick one. No landing spots, just,
D for me.
Who? Judy?
Judy.
Yeah. Judy for me too. I think he has the higher, more translatable game, but I think Lamb's the better prospect.
Agreed on both counts.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said, Justin, I think you nailed it on the head. This is a really great class for wide receivers, not just because it's so deep and so talented, but because there's so many great landing spots. I mean, you could get a wide receiver that could land and fill a big role. That could be a 3rd-round wide receiver, but if they land in a good landing spot, they could be a 1st-round fantasy pick.
Yeah, they definitely
One
could.
thing I just wanted to tell all the listeners here is that if you can, please go and grab all the seconds you can for this 2020 class. If you can get a 2nd-round pick, go and grab it. You'll get a very good prospect who can hit year 1. It's that deep.
Actually, I agree with talent, but I feel like landing spot and there's going to be draft capital. I feel like, I don't know. I'd be more like less trading for seconds and more kind of wait till draft day till you kind of know that. Because last year, we remember the wide receiver class being really deep too, and a lot of them were pushed down. Just kind of overall, a lot of them landed in some bad spots. Fortunately, some of them kind of outgrew that bad landing spot, like let's say AJ Brown. But I don't know. I'd be really patient with draft picks, but I guess they're only going to get
But this year
more
the
expensive.
landing spots are better than last year, Dylan. Last year the landing spots were not great. This
Actually,
year
I
we
do
have
think
better
a lot of
landing
spots were great last year too. This year looks really good too. But I wouldn't like discredit last year. I need to like pull up kind of like the mock drafts and such. But
I mean, if you think
very
about
few
it,
number 1 wide receiver spots last year. Very few. This year we have at least 3 or 4 that we can think of. That is number 1. They want a number 1.
No, I disagree. We should pull it up later after the podcast and see. I think it's closer than giving credit for. But both were really good. That's what I'm trying to say. What's up, Justin?
No, I was going to say we talked about 8 good landing spots for wide receivers, and then we also added in the Texans. So I mean, you got 9 good landing spots. You have 5 or 6 running backs that are going to go kind of in that
Easily.
first round, second round area.
5.
So
At
I mean,
least
think about
5.
how deep that is. Right. So we're talking about mid second. So I think even mid seconds, I'd be buying those up.
Yeah, that's definitely what if we're gonna buy draft picks, buy them now. I will say that, but we'll see. Some of the landing spots probably won't even be filled in through the draft. Wouldn't shock me because I remember that kind of happened last year.
And
with
no
some of the
free agents
spots.
though. There are no free agents
I know, but
left.
some teams just don't think they're holes. Teams are arrogant. I mean, have you met Dave Gettleman? have you met some of these
They
head
also
coaches like
need
Matt
a wide
Patricia?
receiver, by the way.
The Giants do need a wide receiver, exactly. There's a lot of I'm just kind of a wait and see. And one last thing here before we go, I kind of want to bring up here: are we worried about this draft class as a whole because of kind of what's going on in the world right now and how they may postpone the whole season?
Little bit.
I don't think they'll postpone the season, but I am a little worried, especially for the wide receivers and the running backs. But the running backs a little less. But I'm worried about them not getting to train.
Yes.
They will get to see the playbook, but these let's say the quarterbacks and wide receivers, they're not going to have that rapport that they would normally get in training camp. So I think that for the wide receivers and quarterbacks, it could actually be kind of a big deal. But for running backs, and you know where you're supposed to go, then you're usually fine.
With wide receivers, I mean, there are 2 things that can be done. One is that if you are picking someone with your picks, then be patient. They might disappoint early because of no OTAs or something like that. And the other thing would be just buy them mid-season. They will be cheaper.
Yeah, I wonder if what college football is going to do too, because I heard a crazy rumor that they may cancel the next college football season. And then if they do that, imagine if these prospects like Trevor Lawrence could declare for this draft. Could you imagine? That'd be the greatest draft. Then in that case, you're buying the seconds because they'd be
That's
first round.
not happening.
Could
That's
you
not
imagine?
happening.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
When does the college season start?
It starts
August.
Yeah, late August, I think.
Maybe we should talk after the podcast.
Yeah, we should definitely. But thank you guys so much for listening so far. We appreciate it. A little bit of a longer episode here for the wide receivers, but we even missed a few spots. So let us know kind of your dream landing spot and prospect match down below in the comments. Subscribe for future content. Podcasts, YouTube, don't matter. Subscribe. It's going to be worth it. Leave a rating, leave a like. Do your thing and have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. Feel free to leave feedback, subscribe, or check out our previous content. And remember, have a fantastic rest of your day.